Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining today. I am Margot Borgel, Director for IVD Global Regulatory Affairs at RQM Plus. Today, we're going to be discussing the secrets of site selection and monitoring for IVD clinical studies. I'm joined by my colleagues, Brandy Chittister and Manali Patel. Brandy is the Senior Director of Clinical Operations. She provides senior leadership, operational strategy, and oversight for our clinical operations group. With over 16 years of clinical trial and CRO experience in medical devices and diagnostics. Manali is a highly skilled clinical research associate with experience in US and global IVD studies. She is very skilled in GCP, trial site management, quality control, clinical diagnostics, and data analysis. Thanks for joining today, ladies. So the first thing I want to ask is, what are the most important considerations when looking for clinical partners for an IVD study?
Well, really good question to start the conversation. So I think it's important to kind of think about, these studies in different ways. So of course, with the diagnostic or IVD study, we're thinking about, testing a investigational assay to make sure it works the way we intend it to. But there's a couple sides to that. So one side is the testing side. So we want to look for the tests that have the right equipment or experience to be able to run the specific test. But then we also have to think about, how do we get the specimens to run on the diagnostic assay? So sometimes the studies can be split, where there's sample collection sites that are working on, consenting patients, obtaining samples, and then maybe have to process them, store them, ship them. So those are some things we have to look for. And then get them to the testing sites. And sometimes they're at the same location. So it really kind of depends, which is something we like to say a lot in clinical research. It depends on what we're looking for exactly, as far as what specific kinds of partners that we want to look for. So Manali, do you mind kind of talking from your experience some of the things that you look for these studies?
Yeah, sure, Brandy. So when you look at the guidance, whether it's the ICH, FDA, or ISO, they all talk that sponsor must select investigators, those are qualified by training and experience. But how do we do that, right? Reviewing investigators' CV or credential will not guarantee successful enrollment rate, and which is a major factor in delaying study completion. So we also need to evaluate staff who would support the investigator in conducting the study. And so are they qualified? Do they have enough experience with a similar IVD study? For sure, I work as a medical lab scientist. So of course, running the assays on a diagnostic device is important, but like having a good understanding about the GCP and importance of the documentation for the trial is also very important.
Yeah, great points. And I think it's also important to think about the type of study we're running. So what kind of regulatory pathway? Is this a significant risk study like an IDE, or is it 510K? Are we looking at specific types of sites, like what kind of maybe lab accreditation they may have? A lot of times, of course, we're really concentrated on the types of patients that are available, especially in the specimen collection. So do we have the right kind of diversity and representation, disease state? And so that kind of goes with like geographic diversity and getting the right kinds of sites, so that we also get, the different kinds of users, and we can use that data together. So I think there's also things that you're looking for really specifically for some of these sites, right, Manali?
Yes, definitely. So we also need to evaluate, do the site have capacity in terms of the right resources, of course, qualified and experienced staff. And when I talk about qualified and experienced staff, do we wanted to make sure that do they have our current GCP training? Do they have ITA training? Do they have experience in sample collection? Who's gonna collect? Are they gonna collect are the research staff will collect the sample, or some sites I have from my past experience, they have routine healthcare personnel. They will collect the sample. So there is no question about their standard of care collection, right? But a lot of protocols nowadays are getting more complex in terms of multiple sample types, randomization, or sometimes study requires specific order of collection depending on the anatomical site. So do they understand that properly? We're going to train them on a protocol, but do they have basic understanding about that? Also, the way they process the sample, do they have that training? Because we do, some samples do not require freeze-to cycles or the impacts that they have if they do that. So it's really important to consider that they have experience about that. Also, in terms of feasibility, Brandy, as you highlight that types of sites that we need, right? So is it a clinic setting, or is it a hospital lab environment, or a reference lab setting? What kind of CLIA certification or other lab certification they have? The other thing is clinical trials are also, there is a time frame consent, right? So do the what type of IRB they prefer, local versus central IRB, because that's also tied into your budget and time frame. Because central IRB is turnaround time a little bit faster, and they might be budget friendlier. Also, the time frame for budget and contract negotiation. So these all supporting factors that we need to consider before we select our IVD partners.
Is very detailed, lots and lots going into this. So to change things up a little bit, why don't you tell me a little bit about red flags for sites when you're looking at site selection? What are some things that really stand out as a red flag?
Yeah. I'd like to kind of start with just some red flags that are kind of across the board, whether we're looking at a diagnostic study or a typical like med device kind of study. But in the feasibility process where we're selecting sites, there can be some things that just kind of jump up right away. So for example, if we talk to a site and they tell us one thing and then they fill out a feasibility questionnaire and they give us different kinds of information that's inconsistent, right away, we're kind of, scratching our heads like, well, I don't know why we're getting these inconsistencies. Maybe the, good communication is lacking at this site. Other things that can be red flags are just like lack of communication. So if it takes a long time to get through getting a feasibility questionnaire, maybe it's going to be really difficult to get through when we're enrollment barriers, or if the study is difficult, or maybe they're just really busy and they don't have time for our study right now. Other things that we're, of course, going to look at is in that same vein is, are they running studies that are similar, where maybe they will have competing, populations for studies. And so their enrollment might be a little bit compromised based on that. And then, of course, we always can go back to past performance based on working with these sites in the past. Not every time. It doesn't always mean, that we will be unsuccessful in the future, but we definitely want to take those kinds of things into account. So like I said, those are kind of consistent for any study, but I think it'd be great if Manali could share some things from her experience, not only working in the lab, but, being a monitor with different sites.
Yeah, a few things that you already kind of highlighted about the facility concerns, right? So when they have where is the location for their storage area, whether it's a freezer or a refrigerator, are they able to meet the protocol requirement? And the other thing that we need to consider about the access area, right? So sometimes the labs have a mixed environment where sometimes they don't have that designated research area, and how they label their IUO device or IUO kits or sample. Those are kind of concern to highlight. And then other thing is unclear procedures for maintaining the regulatory documents, especially the sites that have multiple satellite location. Sometimes if they don't have clear procedure in place, it might be an issue like maintaining the regulatory documentation, especially delegations and training requirements.
Thank you so much, Manali. So we finished talking about site selection, and please go to our second video to learn more about site monitoring.